to decide if I was going to record or not record an episode. And I think the only feeling of having any kind of control with everything that's happening with the pandemic, with everything that's happening with tragedy after tragedy all over the globe, the only thing that I feel like I have some sort of control over is doing an episode of the podcast. I just saw an article and it says Romania, out of all the European Union countries, is at the highest of deaths from the coronavirus. A year and a half after it all began. And I'm very confused by this because in the same interview, they talk about how Romania, the country I come from, has the lowest percentage in comparison to its population who got vaccinated. And then I'm watching what's happening here politically. Half of the country that watches Fox News and the other half of the country that watches CNN are two different countries of America. There's not one country of the United States of America anymore. There are two Americas. America's on the left, CNN, America's on the right, Fox. And when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to the vaccines, the same battle happened here as it does in Romania. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I could understand why propaganda in America would be something new to a lot of people because of America's history, because of America's democracy in the past. People would not be ready to doubt propaganda when it is done by some officials, by some politicians who only think about gaining personally, gaining power, gaining money, but it's personal gain. And why do the people of this America, which is completely divided into America, why are the people who are on the right coming out with propaganda for the rest of the country to confuse and to lie and to pretend that they know scientifically when they don't, when it comes to this horrible, horrific disease, the coronavirus? And why is it that the Americans are believing their lies? Why is it that so many people to this day, after having witnessed the death of their loved ones, after having witnessed the death of their human kind around them, still refuse to get vaccinated because they think there's something in the vaccine that they put in your body, like a chip that the Democrats want to have a track on you, to follow you, to know exactly what you're doing. The government is trying to restrict you. The government is taking your freedom. The government is putting these chips inside of you to track every move. And I go, why would anybody care to go to that sort of extreme as they believe the government is capable of doing? For what reason, people? For what reason would they give a damn about mere mortals like me or like you, that they would go to that far extreme to put something in the vaccine, to lie to you about it, because They want to take away your freedom. What are you talking about? Do you understand that whatever you are saying when you're trying to give this explanation, that the vaccines are not working, that the vaccines are to destroy you and to destroy your kids, to track you down, for government to be able to control, to take away the freedoms? There's no reality in any of that. There's no reality in you saying that. Don't you see it? Don't you understand? When you're watching people, loved ones dying around you, when you're watching people dying when they did not have to die, if they would have just taken the vaccine, don't you see it? Don't you understand that you have to be very smart in the way that you decide that you're going to make smart decisions when you decide what news organization you must listen to, when you go on social platforms and you decide who do you listen to when it comes to the vaccines, when it comes to the coronavirus. You listen to the doctors, but then you go and you search. You do research on who the doctors are to find out their history so you can have trust in that, what they're saying. Don't listen to somebody who is a teacher to give you advice on vaccines. But at the same time, there are crazy doctors giving you the wrong scientific information. They only care about their own monetary gains or other kinds. So I was thinking, okay, in America, democracy was the examples. Everybody, until a couple of years ago, wanted to be able to recreate in their own countries. I mean, this was the most exemplary of all examples of what democracy should be and how well it works. In America, what we have is one of the best, as best could be ever done when human beings are concerned. So I said, propaganda for the United States is something that, because they have not been used to it, it is done by people who know how to do it in such a way that it becomes an alternate reality, but that alternate reality becomes more realistic to the naive people, let's just call them naive, who want to believe that those people at the top who are giving them the information that is wrong do care about them. They don't. Because those people, they give you the wrong information about the vaccines not working. They only care about putting money in their own pockets. They all have been vaccinated. They're not going to make a public view of it. They're not going to make an announcement of it, but they've been vaccinated. The one thing that they won't do, they won't bring that vaccination moment when they had it done in their hands to public for you to see, because they want to pretend that what they say is what they do, which is not the case. So then why is it that those people who watch them on television saying, don't do vaccines, vaccines are horrible, they're done to track you down, to take your freedoms away, the government wants to take your freedoms away, don't let it happen. Why is it that you still believe them when there is proof that they're saying one thing and they're doing another thing? Even Trump was doing a rally a couple of months ago, and he said it under his breath, not with the same forcefulness in his voice when he talks about all lies and all the things that he talks about, but he said it, yeah, I got vaccinated, go out and get the vaccine. I got it, it works, go get the vaccine. And everybody started to boo him. So when he realized that that's not what people want to hear, they don't want to hear the truth because they're so scared of their situation, of their vulnerability medically, underneath, subconsciously. They're so scared of it that they just want to be standing in front of somebody who says, don't get a vaccine. Do not get one. I'm on your side. I am like you. I understand you. I am here for you. How are you here for them? Go to the details. How are you here for them? when you went and you got vaccinated, but you, the population that's on the side of that politician official, you're not doing what he has done, but you're doing what he tells you. So where is the I walk the talk? Why don't you pay attention to the behavior, to the comportment? Don't pay attention to words, because the words without actions mean absolutely nothing. The words without actions mean absolutely nothing. Comportment, behavior of someone, of a human being, is what you need to pay attention to, because that will show you what kind of a person, of a human, that particular one person is. It shocks me that in America, so many people are being fooled, but it doesn't, because they don't have something to go back to. They don't have moments from their lives, unless the many immigrants like me who come from communist countries. And with that, I have a huge confusion about. So, as you know, I come from Transylvania, which is a region in Romania, where Dracula is famous in any other country in the world except for Romania. Romania and Romanians like me, we did not know that we had a Dracula. Do you want to know the reason we didn't know we had a Dracula when everybody else, the whole world, was watching the Dracula film and were reading the Dracula book? Because Romania was a communist country starting in 1947 and ending the communist regime of Ceausescu and Elena Ceausescu. When the revolution happened in 1989, I happened to be there. I happened to presently be there. I was going to college. I was in my first year of college in the capital of Romania, which is Bucharest. I remember waking up in the morning, just like any other day, preparing to go to the bank to get money from the bank that my parents, who had already been living in Detroit, Michigan, were sending to me. They were sending me money to help me while going to college in Bucharest. I got into a taxi that was outside the campus where we lived. The driver, I believe it was somebody that I would use all the time. They knew that, you know, there were people from different countries living within in our campus that were capable of paying more money, and they had more financial help from their parents back home, their families back home from different countries. They were from Germany, they were from Israel, they were from America, Canada, and I, Romanian, but with parents in America. They knew that they would be able to make more money driving us around because we had more money than the Romanians who never left Romania, or their parents who were still there. So it was the same guy. I get into the car with him, Păsărica. I think his nickname was Păsărica. Îi spuneam Păsărica, dar nu mai știu cum îl chema, I don't know, I don't remember his real name. And we got into the car and he says, where do you want to go? I'm like, I'm going to the bank, which is in the central part of Bucharest. And on the way there were blocks. You could not go on the main street, the one that would have taken us to the bank, the usual way. And we were so used to having that be, well, they're blocking all the streets because Ceausescu, the dictator, and his wife, or Ceausescu and his officials, are probably crossing the town, Bucharest, to go somewhere. So that was something, an occurrence that happened all the time. It was a known fact. We didn't make anything of it. But then as we stayed there for some duration, for a few minutes, we saw that there were no cars passing. So the whole cars passing that we were expecting if the dictator was to drive by was not what this was different, and we didn't realize it was different until we looked outside from the windows of the car, and we saw people gathering and people coming out and people coming out and screaming and screaming, and the Romanian flag that had the communist sign inside, they had ripped that out, and there was the Romanian flag with the hole, and they were screaming, they were calling out, they were saying something, jos cu Ceausescu, take down dictatorships, take down the communist regime, take down. All young people, students, majority, as they were coming down the street to go to the university plaza, which is in the center where the Hotel Intercontinental is, and it's in the center of the, on Boulevard Magheru. We kind of got scared, and he looked at me, the driver said, I don't know, I don't think this is what we think. I think there's something else going on. We should go back and maybe turn on the TV, because we're going to get more information from the news than what we're able to get from here. We were even afraid to ask too many questions. We didn't know what side with these people that were already out there standing up for something. We didn't even know who they were. Were they on the dictatorship side? Were they foreigners coming from outside? But there was the beginning of a revolution that I was in the middle of, and I had no idea that that's what it was. So going back to where we lived on campus, which the guy, the driver, Pasarica, dropped me off because he was going to go home to make sure that his family was okay. There was so much that was happening. I mean, there were like people now coming out of houses, out of the apartments that we were in, trying to figure out what it was. And we turned on the TV, going back in. Everybody was saying, turn on the TV, turn on the TV. They're taking over the TV station. Because at that time, during the communist regime, there were not a lot of channels. I believe there was one channel. There was one government channel. There was a channel that they controlled. There was a channel where everything that they showed about Romania was absolute positivity, lies and lies, propaganda about how our country and our president Ceausescu and his wife Elena Ceausescu were the best leaders of a country. They care about the people, the working people. We're the only country in the world where there are no homeless people. Whenever they were showing scenes from the West, din Occident, they showed the horrible things, the horrible elements, people on the street, homelessness, people fighting, trying to present capitalism to be something that's not good for everyday people, for the working people. So as we were watching television, I got back to my place, and I was there with some friends who came from across the hall. I think some of them were from different countries again. Some of them were friends that were Romanian. They came over to watch what the hell was happening. This was happening during my first year of college, 89 to 90. So 89 Christmas time, this is when the whole thing, before Christmas, that's when the revolution happened. So I started my first year in September. Everything was okay, September, October, November, and then December, the whole thing happened. The revolution took place. I can't believe it's 1989. What is going on? So the people who took over the one channel that we had at that time, the TV station, were people who were portraying themselves to be revolutionaries, fighting for the rights of the people, fighting for freedom, fighting for democracy. They're against the dictatorship. They're against the regime. They've always been against the regime. They've been fighting behind the scenes, trying to overthrow the communist regime. So we're looking at them, and these were faces that we were not familiar with. I was not familiar with. Came on, took over the TV station. We kind of believed them because all we could believe is what we were being told and what we were being shown. As that was happening, they were saying we're going to become a democracy, we're going to change, our country needs to be liberated from the communist dictatorship, from all the bad people that were on his side, and we're going to straighten up the country, and we are going to stop with the propaganda, with the one TV station. Our country is going to turn into what America is: full democracy, full transparency. So who are we to not believe what was being said? I mean, having been under communist for so many years, like I said, from 47 to 89, when the Dracula book during those years was not even allowed in our country. So even though the whole world was making movies about Dracula due to the book by Bram Stoker, we knew we had a leader whose name was Vlad Tepes, and he was considered to be really strict and very against people who were not straight and who were not living by the rules. But we didn't know that the same real character was then transformed into the fictional character of Dracula, because during the communists, the book was not allowed in Romania. So the first time that the book was published, it was after this revolution, which happened in 89. And then the next year, the Dracula book was published for the first time. So we knew that there was a Dracula in our Transylvania in 1990. Crazy, when people knew it for so many years before. But because there was no literature that was allowed in our country that was going to talk about anything that the regime wanted us to think about, they wanted us to just see what was in front of us and what they were telling us, so we wouldn't revolt. So when these people revolted against that dictatorship and the regime, the communist regime, we were like, oh my God, democracy, this is amazing. But then we were looking outside from our windows, our balconies, and there were people shooting people. There was the army that was shooting. There were soldiers that were shooting at people. We had no idea what was happening. So then, in order for these people who took over the TV station and to make the rest of the country, to make us believe that they were fighting for what's right, they were saying that the shooting outside is happening towards those people who are foreigners. Foreigners have come into Romania on top of the communist regime and the communist dictator, and they are trying to still take our country away from us. So they were fighting them and they were killing them. There was so much confusion. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody believed any of it, but we wanted to believe because the communist regime was going to be finally over with and we were going to be free, democracy. Can you imagine after all these years of being kept narrow-minded and not allowed to have free thinking, or the people who were allowed to have free thinking were the ones that were being with the regime and pretending not to. So there were spies among us. There were best friends who we thought were best friends, but we never could 100% know who was next to us and who was going to go and tell exactly if we're saying anything bad about the government. So having that history in Romania of so many years of propaganda, of lies, of brainwashing for so many of us and for the generation before me, the people who invaded the television station later took over the power, the political power, and they went to be not as democratic as they were portraying themselves to be. So a lot of the people said afterwards that it was actually better having had the communist regime because there was no doubt about what it was. Everybody knew we were a communist country, and all the negative and all the bad stuff that was happening to people, it was kind of like, okay, it was a given. You knew that. You knew to shut your mouth. You knew not to say bad about the government. But now the new government that took over, they were pretending to be freeing the country. They were pretending to be democratic, but behind the scenes, there was so much corruption. And as in all those Eastern countries, the same thing happened. The people who took over pretending to be the saviors of our people in our country proved to be corrupt, and they were just about putting money in their own pockets. The same thing that's happening in America right now. But that was in Romania in 1990. 1990, that's 30 years ago, trying to transform from a country that's been narrow-minded for so long, that's been brainwashed. These people, our people, my people, have been brainwashed for so long. They started to believe that what was said to you during all those years of the regime were true. You know, I was very young, and to be honest, I didn't even feel that it was as bad under communist regime, because I didn't have to deal with a lot of things that my parents had to deal with. My father immigrated to America during that regime in 1982, not ever considering that there was going to be a revolution in 1989. But what I'm trying to say is that, because I started this podcast, this episode of the podcast, having read this article, the latest article about Romania is the one country in Europe to have had less than 30% or 30% people to say yes to the vaccines. And now it is the most cases of any other country in this whole period of this pandemic, dying every day. Propaganda that is taking place in America to make half of the country believe that the vaccines are not good, I kind of understand, because there's no history to propaganda. But for those people, for my people in Romania, who have had so many years of training in what propaganda looks like, how are you 30 years later, after the revolution happened, having had that backstory, not necessarily yourself, the new generation, but you've heard from your parents, from your grandparents, from your great-grandparents, what propaganda is. How are you still in today's day, 2021, believing the people who are telling you that vaccines are something that are bad for you? Because they gain from it, not you. You die. What you gain from them is death. You and your family and your sons and your daughters and they were talking about full family dying because they were not vaccinated. The hospitals are filled. 90% are people who are dying from this article that I read are the people who did not accept the vaccines because they believed in the propaganda of the politicians, of the officials who are telling the country, no, don't worry about coronavirus. It's nothing. We should open institutions. We should be not social distancing. We should be coming close together and hugging each other because this is nothing. Well, the nothing that you thought it was is death after death after death. And it upsets me so much for the people who are maybe depending on other people to talk to them and to relate to them the truth, which is vaccines will help prevent people from going to the hospital. God help us all. There is no guarantee that everybody's going to be cured, but there is a percentage, there is some guarantee that you might come out alive. So why would you not trust that? Why would you not do the research? Be smart and do your own research. Don't allow the propaganda of the whatever political party is going on right now that's telling you that vaccines are not good. Why don't you do your own research? So then you don't have to trust this person on this side of the political views with this person on the other side of the political views. The opposite. You don't have to trust any of them. You don't have to consider yourself to be with them, to be with the others. Do your own research. Do your own research. That takes me to the podcast and acting, and what does it have to do with what I'm talking about? I am talking about the fact that I am so saddened by what's happening all over the world, because there could have been more people alive today if only different officials and different politicians in high positions, like I said, both sides of the aisle, would not care so much about their own gain and their own pockets. It's so sad. It is so sad to see that that's happening. The same way that I try to conclude or to come together with the acting and the teachings, the training, the education that acting provides for people. Acting gives tools to people who are not actors necessarily. Anybody who decides to want to understand acting as it is, not as it is misunderstood, not as it is misrepresented by people who don't know, but their credentials are that they do know. Just like with everything else, you take experts not by what they say, but by what they do. Do the research on them. See if you can trust them about the science. See if you can trust them about acting. There are bad acting teachers out there, lots of them. There are bad television people who pretend to know acting, and they come on and they talk about acting in a way that is so absurd that it blows my mind of how bad it is. Acting teaches me, at least, this is my opinion, I have to say that, this is my opinion, this is my podcast. I speak from my own experience. I speak from the understanding of my 20-some years of career with confidence on something concrete that I have put in practice, which is shared acting, taught acting with different people of different professions from every part of the world that you can imagine. And when the work, the acting was being taught the way that I have received that from the famed actor studio, and I have taught it, my interpretation of it, it's Mihud method, because I don't want anybody to say that I'm talking about for the actor studio. I am not. I am talking as Mihaela Mihud, lifetime member of the actor studio, with my interpretation of the method. That's why I put it under my last name, Mihud method. So there's no misunderstanding. The teaching that I do, which is the one that is not known out there by famous people and interviewers, but they dare talk about it, even if they don't know, is one that will give you tools and it will provide you with understandings of the human behavior. They will provide you with education that when you see this is somebody who is talking about the vaccines, and they're saying that the vaccines are being put into your arms with trackers. You look at that person and then you say, why is that person saying all these things in front of so many people, millions of people, because they have been able to create big platforms for themselves, when the actions of that person, the same actions of the person who spoke those words, were that he had gotten the vaccine and he had also gotten the vaccine for his family. If I were to do that as an acting coach and look at my character that I am trying to analyze, and this was the character, I would say, if he says one thing and does another thing which contradicts what he said, that character is a hypocrite. He's a liar. He is a person not to be trusted. That's who the character is. That's my analysis. The next question that an acting teacher would ask, that an actor would ask of the character, why? Why then is he doing that? When he knows that what he's saying, he knows himself that what he's saying is nonsense. Why would he be doing that? What does he want to gain? He wants to gain power. He wants to gain more people to come onto his platform, because the more people who believe in his lies, the more powerful he becomes. Does he care about those people when his objective and his wants are to become powerful for himself, for his own family? With power comes money. He wants to be powerful. He wants to be rich. He wants to do all of that on the backs of the people that he's lying to. That would be my analysis of my character. So why wouldn't people who are watching this politician be able to come up with that analysis? The reason is because we have not been trained, we have not been taught, we have not been educated in social and emotional education in school. The manual of acting is the manual of life that teaches you understanding of humanity, of our shared stories. We can look at each other, we can look at people, and we can analyze them in a way specific, so then we don't have to believe their shit. We don't have to believe their nonsense and their lies. Another event is the same one that I talked about last week when I talked about Alec Baldwin as the moderator, and the news that are coming out, the more specifics and details that are coming out on the set of Rust with Halina, the beautiful cinematographer, dead, and Joel Souza hurt, shot in the shoulder, but out of the hospital. There's more coming out about the many deficiencies that were happening on that set. They do not have yet the people. They are going to be held responsible. I don't know if they're going to be held responsible. It's not my place. I'm not a lawyer. I can't speak for lawyers the same way that experts who don't know acting should not speak about acting. But what I can tell you is that I'm watching the news, both CNN and Fox. I'm watching both. And they're bringing experts that have to do with filmmaking. The ones that are prop masters and are talking about the guns, and they're talking about the difference between the prop gun and the real gun, ammunition, I know nothing about. So I am not going to give you any sort of understanding more than the one that the experts who know that kind of thing, because that's what their work is. But what I can tell you about something that was said, and it caught my attention, that has to do with my part of training, and it has to do with my teaching acting the right way, the correct way, the way that it should be taught, as discovered by Stanislavski 100 and some years ago, and then taken over by Lee Strasberg 75 years ago or so, is that for any actor who cares to put in the work that he needs for him or her to do justice to any characters that they interpret, that they portray, because you have to be responsible for those characters. You have to be responsible and you have to do them justice. Everything starts with the sensory work. Sensory work is the foundation of method acting. Sensory work. So at some point, one of the experts on one of the channels, I believe it was CNN or Fox or I don't know, was asked, why is it necessary for real guns to be on the set of movies? Why has it been necessary for real guns to be on set of movies? Which kind of shocked me that they had the real guns, because I didn't know that that was the case. And I would have asked the same question, but from a different point of view, coming from a different point of view. And the expert said the actors have to train with the real gun. They have to train with the real gun. They have to feel the weight of it. So they have to use a real gun. They have to use a real gun in order to understand the weight of the gun, in order to understand how it pushes you back when you fire it. They have to feel the right object in order to then know how to use the one. They might not have the same weight or might not fire the same. And that made me so mad. Because you know what they're doing? The same way that they are saying now that they were cutting corners to so many safety issues that were happening. That's the latest that's been coming out from there. In my mind, I was thinking that they were cutting corners as actors. That's why there's a difference between great actors and good actors. Good actors have to use the real gun in order to understand the weight of it and figure out the way that it works, and then tragedies happen. But the great actors don't have to use the real gun, because you know what they can do? They can say, how much does the real gun weigh? What is the weight of a real gun? What is it? It's, let's say, I don't know how much. Let me find an object. I can find an object, a brick, a phone, anything that weighs the same. Put that in my hand. And even though my phone doesn't pull me down right now because it doesn't weigh a lot, if I'm saying that this is a real gun, right? If I'm saying that this is a real gun, I'm going to allow the weight of my phone to see what it does to my hand. It pulls me down, but it doesn't pull me down as much. If I decide that I'm going to use a different object that's going to help me better with understanding the weight, this is heavier. This is heavier. And it's just a case. It's nothing. It's a case of a computer hard drive. It's nothing dangerous. As an actor, what we are taught at the actor studio and what I teach as an acting coach is that use the senses that you use every day without being conscious. Use them as an actor by being conscious of how you use them. That will help with safety. Because if you are given an object that is heavy and that pulls you down, if this is heavy as the gun would be, then I know how my shoulder goes down. So when I lift it up a little bit, my body goes to the side as I'm demonstrating. Do you see? When one object is different weight than the other object, the whole body adjusts to the weight of that object. But that is called work. That is called responsibility that an actor has to the work, to the practice of that work, over and over and over again with the freaking case until you get to the specifics and you observe every detail of your body and what it does. So then when you pick up the rubber gun on set, plastic gun with no ammunition, no matter of the lightness of it, no matter how light it is, because you've done the work as an actor, as great actors do, sensorially. It's one of the two. I never know which is the correct way. It doesn't matter. Because you've done training and you've done rehearsal and practice over and over and over again with the same weight of another object. Then you know when you pick up, let's say you can pick up my glasses, let's just say this is the plastic gun. If I pick up my glasses and I already know, like my shoulder drops, but then my part of this body goes a little bit more to the, closer to the ground because I have to pick it up. Huh. It's heavy. Huh. It's heavy. Do you see? It's heavy. It's hard to keep it up. My glasses are light because I've done the repetition and I've done the training and the rehearsal. I allowed them to be the weight that I played with earlier with the case that I had, or with another object that was the weight of the gun. So when I go here and I'm already feeling that it's hard to hold, it feels like I have a gun. Do you see it? Especially because I'm not physically trained to hold a gun. So my arms are not muscled. My arms are not ready, or they have not been worked out. So when I pull this up, do you see how I go backwards and my head tilts back a little bit in order to feel the weight of the gun? So then when I go like this, ow, it's still heavy because I gave myself the intention and I gave myself the responsibility to do the work, to try to do it justice the best that I can. So when I go like this and I'm like, oh, it's falling down, but it's not. The heaviness also makes my breathing change a little bit. because my effort that I'm putting into it requires my breathing to change. Do you see that? I'm getting a little bit, I'm getting a little bit sweaty right now. Another finding for myself as an actress in how to use my sensory apparatus to be able to portray a make-believe fictional situation that should have make-believe guns, not real ones. So then when I hold it, it looks like I come in front of the camera. Still working, still working, still working. And it doesn't hurt anybody because I have my prescription glasses, or I have a case that I'm using, or I have the rubber gun that I don't have, the plastic gun. The actors have to be aware of the responsibility that's placed on their shoulders to be able to do justice to those characters in fictional stories and make them seem real without using the real gun, without using the real object. If you are using the real object, if you're using the real gun, what's the difference between an actor and somebody on the street? There's no artistry in using the real object. If you're using the real gun because you do not know, you don't know how to show me that using a plastic one, you can make me believe that it's real. You cannot make me believe that it's real if you're using a plastic one. You have to use a real one. Then that means that you're not an artist. You're not an artist. You're just a good actor. You're not a great actor. Go back to training. Continue training. Because great actors continue training. They never stop. Because these everyday behaviors of our humanness, of our humanity, have to continue to be practiced because we evolve as people. Therefore, we have to continue with that evolvement. If you're going to use a real gun, then don't call yourself an actor. What's the artistry in that? The artistry comes when you're using a object that is something else than the real object, and you make me believe that is the real one. Objects, specific, significance. If I'm holding in my hand right now a picture, I'm doing it like this, you can see my face. If I'm holding this picture in my hand, right? And I can use my senses again. I can visualize who that person is if I were to choose a person. I'm not going to say who it is because that's something that I want to keep to myself. But I'm choosing that person, and that person is right here. I am giving myself enough concentration to see that I have nothing at first, to admit the truth, and then to imagine the person. Do you see? Do you see what happens? But that requires work. That requires a little bit of time, which is very difficult for us to take because we always think that we're kind of wasting other people's time when we use our time. But I'm giving myself the time to do it. This is called artistry. If I were to go and pick up a picture, the real one, and look at the same person that I visualized, but I have the real picture with that person, where's the artistry? Where is it? There's no artistry. The artistry is in the creating real out of fiction, creating using imaginary objects and making the audience believe they are real. That's where the artistry is. Using a fake rubber plastic gun and making the audience believe that it's a real gun. That's where the artistry is in. It's not in doing it with the object itself. That is no artistry. That is lack of work. That is laziness. So stop being lazy. Stop being lazy with your mind and letting other people brainwash what you're thinking. Stop being lazy in doing the research that's needed to find out whom you should believe and whom you should not. Stop being lazy and do the work in whatever it's needed. As actors with real objects, you don't need to use real objects, especially the ones that are of danger. Even if they're 1% dangerous, do not use them. It's not necessary. Very few artists out there know the difference, and very few actors out there know the difference. And those who do, the movies are becoming recognized. The movies are being given awards. The actors are working on and on and on. But there is very few in comparison to all the actors in the whole world. And it goes the same with the politician. Ask of them, ask of yourself to do the work in finding who they are before you believe if you should take the vaccine or not. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about things that are important to me. They're my opinions. They're my opinions. And they're based on a lot of years of concrete, in practice work that I've done and I am continuing to do. Thank you so much.